G'day folks, I just wanted to have a bit of a chat about some of the flexibility Bitwig Studio offers. That's, I think, is unique to Bitwig Studio. Anyway, let's just play this back and you guys can listen to... This is going to sound terrible, by the way, because I've got everything enabled. Okay, so what's so special about all this? All of the notes are being generated from chords, which is not that special, but the way that everything's routed, I think, is kind of special. Now, this is a technique that I use. There's many different ways to skin a cat when it comes to Bitwig. And in my case, everything is revolving around scalar. You don't have to use scalar. You can just have a regular, MIDI clip with your chord progression, but I like to use scalar. So I'll show you my methodology with scalar. I've got 3 instances in this particular project file. And so in order to be able to distinguish between them, I make sure that I name my instances specifically. Actually name it. So I've called it scalar A. And then you can see I've got scalar B, scalar C. Okay, so that's important when it comes to routing. You'll see why in a minute. They don't have any MIDI clips of their own. And you can see down here using the note receiver, I'm actually telling scalar to receive notes from this command track. Will command scalar on which one of these notes to play. The incoming MIDI is bound to section C inside scalar. This MIDI clip here is playing these slots from C2 to C3 because there are 8 notes and it's just using the white ones. So ignore the black note. If I was to bind to A, you'd see that there's only 5 bound notes coming in. But we're going to section C because this is my custom work area where I put the chords that I want. Anyway, there's other tutorials on how to use scalar. So everyone familiar with scalar will know exactly what I'm talking about, and I'll stop talking about that now. So what I've done here is I've just made a basic clip, which is just literally just 4 bars long and then just repeated. And that progressively goes through this sequence. You don't have to do it that way, but I've just done it this way out of a demo just so that it's uncomplicated. I can change that at any time. And all of these instances of scalar are utilizing that same one. So if I go into the notes group, and I've got chord progression command selected for each of these 3 scalar instances. They all take advantage of scalar's feature to, live sync from one master instance of scalar. And I've done this here. Then all of these other instances of scalar will get the same content, the same notes. They don't get the same commands, so you still have to feed them the MIDI that you want driving those slots, but the content in the slots is the same. So this can be a bit confusing with scalar. But the telltale here is that it's following the master scalar, and you can see over here it's blinking follow. If I go to the master one, it says it's the leader. Okay, so that's important. We've got a master with 2 followers, but all 3 instances are manually pointed to the command MIDI. This is why I put it on a separate track. Okay, so I've got a programming background, so I like to abstract things out. All of these things are pointed to the same command clip. I don't like to have 2 sets of notes, duplicating each other. If I change it in one place, that means I have to remember to change it in another place. So now I've just got one clip that's driving the chord progression for the entire project. And if I change it in that clip, it changes for the entire project. I won't have to worry about making mistakes. That's the big take-home point for why I'm making this video. All right, it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I just thought it's interesting. I thought I'd share it. Some people might find it peculiar or entertaining. I'll show you why I've got 3 instances. So the first one just outputs unmodified chords that have been entered into these slots. And the best way to listen to that is, my semi-hollow instrument that I've got here from Ample Sound, and I'll just play that through. Okay, so that's actually that's actually not the best example, because that's actually listening to scalar B. But if I've got scalar instance B, which is here. I've just got that set to strumming. That's why strumming is going to an instrument that you would strum. If I wanted to, I could go to the notes and I could go to scalar A and I could say, give me the scalar A device output. Okay, so I'm getting the output for that device. And now when I play back, I won't get the strumming, but I'll get the chords. See, that doesn't sound the same. That's actually one of the reasons why you have multiple instances of scalar, because you can tell scalar to produce different output from the same content. So in this case, I'm telling it to do a performance. That performance in this case is a strumming performance, and it's using an alternative method at medium speed. And so that's one example of why you create multiple instances of scalar, so that you can get it to perform differently. So in this case, I'm going to put it back to the strumming, the instance of scalar that's specifically set up for strumming. So scalar B, I've put in brackets here so I know where it's getting its performance from. Let's just have a look at what's using scalar C. I think that's a piano, Boss piano. Yeah, I should put in here scalar C. Okay, so we know our Boss piano is actually hitting up scalar C. So what's scalar C doing? So if we go up here, look at performance, it's got under performances, and then a submenu from that is expressive cantando. So whatever that means, I don't know what that means, but it sounds cool when you send it to the piano in this case. So let's play that back. Okay, so I've done some other nonsense here as well with the humanize. I turn up the chance. That plays 100% of the notes that are coming in from the output of scalar C, which is doing the cantando. And I can halve that as well at speed, or I can double it. And that halves the note lengths as well when I double the speed. So I'm just playing that at 1 times. And to make it a bit more jazzy, I'm randomly leaving out some notes by reducing the chance to about 80%. So it takes away the sort of robotic repetitiveness as we go through the loop. Alright, so let's stop this nonsense. The thing with scalar 1, or scalar A I should say, is I'm sending that to a contact instance which has multiple instruments loaded into it. And so this is another thing that's interesting here. So there's a couple. Before I get there, let's cover modo bass. I could have also loaded a bass into the contact instrument multi, but I just wanted to show another method here. Just getting the standard chord progression by pulling it in using the note receiver in Bitwig. Now I can go to Phrasebox. And Phrasebox is a first-class MIDI processor, so MIDI in and MIDI out, and it just manipulates the MIDI. So for those of you who know about Phrasebox, you can make musical phrases from incoming chords. So in this case, I've just done a very simple one here. I've actually used a preset. I've just gone and selected funk as a preset here under bass. So there's a bass subsection, and then I've selected funk because I decided to do this example as funk. And what it's doing here is it looks at all of the notes in a chord and gives them a number. So the lowest note in the chord is 1. And so this is going to take the lowest note and then play every second note in the bar. And you can see over here, this little arrow indicates that there's an octave, there's a transpose up, and there's a transpose down and then up. So the bass line's not hitting the low note constantly. It's using that low note, but then it's doing some semitones up and down every time. So in this case, it's 12 semitones, so it is actually an octave. Let's hear what Phrasebox does with that. So the speed of the progression through scalar remains the same, but the speed for the note selection through Phrasebox changes. Let's just do something ridiculously fast. Anyway, you get the idea. The output of Phrasebox is then going into a filter. Now, the reason why I'm filtering it is because, so if we have a look at the standard bass register, we've got E1 to D sharp 4. That's the standard. We're filtering only notes that are in this bass's register. But what do we do with the missing notes when the notes go above and below that register? So we don't have to do anything. We could like leave all of that out if we wanted to, but because I'm a bit of a sucker for punishment, I decided I'm going to grab the low notes by checking for everything outside the range. So in this case, I've set this to remove. So all the removed notes are going to pass through. So it's basically an inverse of whatever this is. So everything below E1 and above D4 is going to go through. But I only want to grab stuff that's below. So I've filtered it again to keep only the notes that are below E1. So you can see I've got F0 to E1. All right, and then I grab those notes and I push them up 1 octave. All of the notes that are within an octave below the normal register, I'm folding them back up by 1 octave. And then I'm doing the mirror of that here where it says fold high notes. So I'm saying everything outside of the normal range and then grab everything that's above. Again, that's only filtering for 1 octave above the register. And then if I find that octave, I push it down. I transpose it down by 1 octave if I find a note that's within 1 octave above the normal range. If this automatic stuff throws stuff at us that's out of range, Bitwig has the necessary tools for us to rein it in. I don't think any other software has this built in. You'd have to use third-party things, I'm guessing. I haven't really used Cubase and all of that, but I know Studio One, which used to be my preferred DAW, doesn't have this, and this is the reason why I switched to Bitwig. So this is kind of a big deal for me because of the way that I like to program things. That's how I have fun with Bitwig. Bitwig is itself an instrument, in my opinion. And anyway, so that's what I've done there. And we can see that Modo Bass has this annoying habit of turning off one of the channels randomly. I don't know why it does it, but the way to fix that is to make sure you've saved your preset. Like I've called this TK Funk. So if I go and I just randomly select another preset, and then I go back to my preset now, which is under the finger category, go all the way down the bottom, TK Funk, and I select it again, suddenly I've got both channels back. Yeah, it's an annoying thing about Modo Bass. I don't know what the answer is for that. It always does it. So yeah, this is a MIDI processor rack, and I created the MIDI processor rack by just selecting the MIDI processor that I wanted to start with and then pressing Ctrl G to put it in a group, and by grouping it, it puts it into a rack. So if I select this over here, Bitwig calls it a note effects layer. So I've got 3 layers of note effects. This layer is passing directly through stuff that's notes that are already in the bass's actual register, in this case modo bass, as determined by. And this layer here is capturing everything below the register, and this layer is capturing everything above the register. So this is pretty unique, in my opinion. See this blue bracket over here? The blue bracket corresponds to the blue on the side here. So you don't get confused about nesting. It's actually a good system. Okay, so after this stack of layers, I'm running the humanize thing again, so that first of all, it's dropping some of the notes. It's not playing them all. If I just turn it up to 100%, then I'm getting exactly what Phrasebox is throwing at me. But if I just turn it down a bit, I get a bit of randomization through the loop as it leaves some notes out. I'm leaving this timing alone, but the velocity I'm randomizing. So humanize is just another word for randomize, really. So this modo instrument sounds different at different velocities. So to get a bit of interest, I'm randomizing the velocity. And at the end of most of my chains, I always use the Bitwig peak limiter. So there you go. So that's what's happening with modo. And that's the end of that story. So I'm going to switch that off. All right, now let's take a look at what I'm doing with this Contact multi instrument over here. All of the instruments in this multi are going to be taking from Scalar A, so I've written that in the title there. So like I said before, Scalar A just puts out the vanilla chord progression. It doesn't do anything with it. There are no performances, there's no strumming or anything like that. It's just straight up chord progression. In fact, the best way to test that is for me to actually solo Scalar and turn on the instrument for Scalar. So Scalar A sounds like this. If I give it the digital piano, oh, I thought that was off. It should be off. Let's turn it back. Let's turn on the piano, put on the felt piano. Okay, so loading that up. Okay, now if I hit play, okay, so what you're hearing is the straight chord progression. And if I turn off the instrument, you should hear silence. Okay, so now it's just outputting the MIDI. And we know that it's outputting the MIDI because when you look in Bitwig, these yellow squares indicate when there's a signal. So if I press stop, you'll see those yellow squares won't light up anymore. Okay, so those yellow squares saying, hey, there's a MIDI signal traveling here. And you know that you're getting MIDI outside the end of the plugin when you've got a yellow dot on the other side of the plugin, so it's passing MIDI through it. Some plugins should pass MIDI through it, but annoyingly they don't. It would be really great if you could have the UJam virtual piano, for instance, output the MIDI that it's creating from input chord progressions or input chords. But it doesn't do that. Anyway, that's another story. I'll make a video dedicated to that actually, because that one, I'd really like to have that changed, and I'd like to open a discussion on that. There's a lot of people in the comments section of UJam that agree with me. But anyway, that's another story. So we've just established we're just getting standard chord progression from Scalar A, and we can test that by using the built-in instrument into Scalar. Okay, so I'm going to turn off that solo. I'm just going to solo the Contact instrument now, and let's go back. Let's close this off and head on back to Contact. So if I go to the standard rack view, which you'll be used to if you're used to Contact 6 and below, if I scroll down here, you'll see that I've got 3 instruments. Okay, the first one, Vintage Electric, I've assigned to MIDI channel 1 over here, port A, MIDI channel 1. Okay, and then the next one I've assigned to channel 2, and then the brass I've assigned to channel 3. You can see I've created 3 channel feeds. So for channel 1, I've created its own feed, and for 2 and 3. So let's have a look at channel 1's feed. So first of all, I get a note receiver and I pull from Scalar A. So that should immediately tell you that I don't necessarily have to drive all instruments from a single instance of Scalar. I can actually assign the other channels to different Scalar instances if Scalar has different performances, or if I just got a manually made MIDI clip, I can also use that as an input. Completely flexible. I've just done it this way out of formality. So I could have, because all three channel feeds basically have the same note source, I could have actually just had one of these, and I could have put it on the other side, and then I could have just had the routing as the layer. But anyway, don't think about that if it's blowing your mind. if it's making it too complicated because you're not familiar with this stuff, I understand. I'm familiar with it, so for me it doesn't sound complicated, but for people who are new to Bitwig, this might seem a bit of a stretch. But this is the thing with Bitwig. Don't worry if you don't understand it up front. Just think of it as a tool that has enough depth so that you don't get sick of it, and it's always going to grow with your knowledge. So as your capability grows, Bitwig's still got more headroom to keep growing with your understanding. Anyway, so getting back to channel 1, what am I doing? First of all, I just want to ensure that everything's going to get routed to channel 1. So I've got an instance of channel map. So this is the proper name, but I've renamed it to route channel 1. So the Bitwig name for this is channel map. So if I was to click in one of these blue boxes here, so if I was to say channel map, you can see over here, that's what it's actually called, okay? It's not called a router. I'm calling it a router. That's what I've named it because that makes sense for what I'm doing in this situation. But it's called channel map. Anyway, so once I've used channel map, I can go in here and I can just make sure that channel 1 is routed to input 1. In fact, if I wanted to, I could go, I'm just dragging with my mouse now, so I can grab this, drag down and say, hey, any fancy channels that you're sending me from this input, make sure it's all going to channel 1. So I literally just found a bug in my design because that's what I was supposed to do. So the whole point of this router is to make sure that everything goes to channel 1, which is what I've now done. And now, if for whatever reason I had a bug and I failed to make sure everything was going to channel 1, I've just added a filter on the end to say, hey, listen, just ignore everything. So I've just gone through here. When you first install the channel filter, all of them are enabled, so you have to go through and manually unclick them. And now I've just said only through channel 1. Okay, so now that we've done that, that's the end of our note effects device layer. And then we go into Kontakt. Okay, so we know that we've got channel 1 notes coming from scalar A. So coming from scalar A, only everything routed to channel 1, filtered for channel 1. And we know that that is going to end up right here on Electric Vintage because Kontakt has it set to channel 1. So basically, I could just duplicate these ones. So when I created this, I just selected that one and I pressed Command D to duplicate that. And then I went through and I just basically changed all of these to 2, as you can see I'm doing now, because I forgot this section. Okay, so you might be asking, why am I making duplications when it's literally coming from the same content? The reason is because I'm creating a template that is flexible. So later on, if I choose to not have the same source, then all of this stuff will act as a safety mechanism, and it'll get the job done. It'll make sure everything's going to the correct channel so that I can just use one instance of Kontakt, which will help me save memory because, as I've demonstrated before, I have memory issues when I'm composing and I have to bounce down a lot of stuff. So I'm kind of not quite into the red, and when I'm in the red, bad things happen in my experience with this Mac. So this is one of the reasons I'm just creating this elaborate system to use a multi, which can avoid me having to bounce down. I know that's bad English, but that's okay. Which means that I can avoid having to bounce down unnecessarily. So I don't even know if that theory is correct, but I'm giving it a try anyway. So same thing with channel 3, no need for me to repeat myself. Okay, so that's all routed to channel 3. Now, the other thing that I did within Contact, I clicked on this button here, which allows me to access the multiple outputs that I have here in Contact. Where is it? I have to go to Rack View. And then once I'm in Rack View, I can have a look at outputs. Yes. So these outputs here, stereo 1, stereo 2, stereo 3, which is 1/2, 3/4, 5/6, correlates to this over here. I have to go up into each one of these instruments and I have to set it specifically here. So I've just left the first one for the first stereo output, and then I go on to the second one and I said, nope, don't send it to the first stereo output. So I've manually had to go and select stereo 2. And then for my third Contact instrument, I've manually had to go and select stereo 3. And having done so, this means that when I hit play, you'll see that the audio is coming out of those ones separately. I'll just bring this up again so you can see what's going on. Hit play. I've got 2 layers nested inside the note receiver to process that, which restricts things to the which restricts incoming note data to the register. I'm just calling this the register, the blue keys here. I'm going to go back here to the soloed one. Let's go back to channel 1. Let's work with channel 1. We've got a dedicated track. Again, I'm abstracting this out. I don't have to, but I'm doing it because I'm a programmer. So I've got a set of key switch instructions here, otherwise known as MIDI notes. These key switches, you can see over here E1 through to G1, which corresponds directly here E1 through to G1. Okay, these key switches are being pulled in. These key switches are sitting on the Native Instruments Session Guitar Patterns track. So if I go back to this note receiver and I'm look NI Sesh GTR, okay. So in the key switches group, we've got Native Instruments Session Guitar Patterns, and then I want the content of that track. So I've selected that. I don't have any effects applied to that. That's where I'd put a filter if I wanted to, but I don't need to. And that's what's driving this. So now when I hit play, those key switches should work. So let's check it out. Key switches are changing the pattern. You can see with these key switches, they are driving the pattern sequence up here. Now, from a musical point of view, if I was to just change the length of these notes, let's just snap to the halfway point and then hit repeat. Okay, so now these patterns are going to rotate through at twice the speed, and you'll see it'll change the musicality. Okay, so this is the kind of flexibility that you get when you do this sort of thing. I'm just holding down Alt here so that I can stretch the clip. But anyway, this is just a demo, so I didn't really put that much thought into it, really. I just sort of went through and chose funk presets because that's the rhythm track that I started with. I didn't introduce you to the rhythm track, actually. I might just do that now. So let's just put this back. Now, if we go to the second channel and the second instrument for the second channel over here, let's just solo this guy. And we will note that it's also using the same key switches that the first one's using. So I don't have to. I could easily create another track over here and then pull in a different track with this, but I'm reusing it because I can. So let's have a listen to the other one. Okay, so let's listen to these two together, and we'll just do that by taking that off, and I'll just mute the third one, and that will effectively solo the first two, because I don't know how you do that normally. All right, so these two guitars, what I've done is using the output for the contact instance, I can tell Bitwig to send channel 1 40% pan to the right, and channel 2 40% pan to the left. And so when we listen to both these guitars together, we get this result. There we go. And that's all been driven from this command track up here. And if I wanted to go and change notes in Scalar, I could. If I picked the first instance of Scalar and I went and I changed the notes. Let's do this. Let's just say I'm going to get, I don't like that one. Let's say I want to make a more fancy one. I'm going to go suggest. I'm going to select this yellow bit because that's what I want to change. So instead of that being G7th, I could go and let's just keep it in minimize movement and auto detect. Just trying to scroll along here. What else you got for me? Okay, let's try this one. Okay, let's say we want that one. Bamo, we've changed that now. Now across the whole song, it's updated. There we go. Anyway, you get the idea. I can change the chord progression in real time in one spot using Scalar. And guess what? As I do that, all the other instances of Scalar will also update because don't forget, we have Scalar's sync feature enabled. I'll go and do that. So just have a look at these notes down the bottom. When I change these, I'll keep that playing back. And change these two around. See, that's changed over there. It's also changed over there. Change it back. And everything is synchronized. So if I was to unsolo this, change it again. Anyway, you get the idea. Get onto that third one, which we had muted. So unmute it and solo it. And you can see I've actually used different key switches here. So Session Horn's got its own key switches. And so when we go to the multi, we can see on channel 3, MIDI channel 3 layer, we've got its own key switches, and this goes to Session Horns, which is picking this up here, NI Session Horns patterns. That's what this is, NI Session Horns patterns. All right. So you can see I've got a different pattern set here, and that's changing this this phrase. You can see over here I've got the keys. You know, D1 actually starts at C -1 and heads all the way up to A -1. So you can see here I'm in the -1 register, which is another reason why I had to use a separate MIDI clip for these key switches. And you can see also these key switches change twice as frequently as the other phrase key switches for the guitars. So let's just put that on solo and then see what that sounds like. You can see in the blue you're getting the notes, which is all coming from Scala A. Yeah, that doesn't necessarily sound great, but it's illustrating. It illustrates the point. If you wanted to keep everything a bit tighter, you could stop this from being harmonious. You could just say that, make it unison. So if I solo this, and it just plays unison notes now. That'll probably be better. Because I think some of the harmony notes that the plugin is generating is clashing with what the guitars are putting out. So you just have to use your musical knowledge to rein that in. That's not really a Bitwig issue. Bitwigs give you enough rope to hang yourself. So let's see if that sounds a bit better now. If I unsolo the horns. Yeah, so I think that's helped the issue, but it doesn't necessarily sound great. But like I said, it illustrates the point. You know, I actually think probably things would sound better if I just muted that one, because I haven't spent enough time to make that one fit. So just unmute this. So what else have we got going on here? I already showed you the bass, and the only other thing that I left out probably is the piano. So we've got this U-Butte free plugin here called from Boz Digital Labs. I'm not sure if it's still free, the light version actually, but they've got two versions. They've got the light one, which is cheaper than the other one. But this piano is great. I love it. It's a small memory footprint, and it sounds fantastic. And I don't have to load up Contact in order to have a lovely piano. And it sounds a lot better than Bitwig's built-in sampler piano, grand piano, which isn't too bad, but this is just better. Anyway, let's just solo the piano, see what's going on with that. Okay, so that's getting its stuff from Scalar C. You can see over here, note source is SCLRC. And this is why we name things. You can see over here, I've called it Scalar C Performance. That gives me a hint that I've got this instance of Scalar set to being some kind of performance. And so we can see what that's doing when we hit play. Now notice with the piano, we haven't got all the notes playing. So if I turn that all the way up, then we got all the notes coming from the performance. Yeah, we've got some pretty funky 13ths and stuff going on over here. Yep. C major add 13, which is why that sounds juicy. So if I wanted to make it a bit more interesting, I can just reduce the amount of notes that are actually going to come through by adding this humanize device. I'm also varying the velocity a bit, but not too much. So if I hit play now, it's going to sound different through every loop because of the randomization that occurs when random notes get dropped out. Okay, so another variation of that is to turn the chance right down. And then just double it by having another layer. So basically I had one of these to start with, and then I just pressed Command G, and that put it in a group, and then I pressed Command D to duplicate that layer. And you can see here it's currently disabled, so if I go Alt A to enable that, layer, you can see it's got another humanized layer with a very small chance. So there's two lots of small chances adding together, and that creates even more randomness with the playback. Let's have a listen. That might sound really retarded by itself, but if we play it back in the context of the mix, it's jazzy. So you can see with the performance here, it's not only using the performance feature from Scala, it's also funking around with this voicing of the chord. So it's not just playing what we see here. If I just hit that, you can see the voicing change. If I turn off voicing by clicking on it, hit it again. You'll see that it just changes it slightly, but you can change it dramatically depending on what you select from here as well. Open voicing, guitar voicing is useful if your destination is a guitar. And then of course, what I've done here with the Scala version of Humanize, I've actually selected a 40% swing on 16th notes. And I've used that across my entire project. And in fact, you can see with this 40% 16th swing, if we go back to Contact and we have a look at some of these controls here, playback, here it is. Swing 16ths and 40% roughly. So set that to 40%. Sorry, I was in the wrong tab. And stuff gets complicated. So playback, and then this should have a swing, and I haven't set it to 16ths, but 40. Yep. So matching 40% 16th note swing across projects by doing that. Let's have a listen, see if you can actually tell anything useful. Anyway, you get the idea. I'm going to do something really radical now just to prove a point. I'm just going to go click song, and I'm going to go look for jazz. I don't even know. I'm just going to click this middle one here. And I'm just going to grab all that, drop it straight in. Okay, completely different chord progression. Okay, before we do anything, we need to make sure that this is selected. Let's try that again. Yeah, that's jazz. So even though it's saying, hey, we're in C Mixolydian mode, and you go down and you see all these ones here that are not blue because they're outside of the, whatever this detected scale is, they're outside of that. And yeah, it's jazz. So they're just like, yeah, here's some spicy stuff. So yeah, jazz does that. Look at jazz 6. Look at that. It's all in C major. Let's try that. That might even work. Let's first of all actually copy this stuff. Just drop it down here on pattern 2. Okay, and we're following section C. And so everything else should follow along. Change it in real time. In my opinion, that does not sound good at all. But it's jazz, and I know nothing about jazz, man. So yeah, I don't know, man. Let's try something else. Let's try something else, not jazz. I don't know how lo-fi is its own set of chord progressions. Anyway, let's try it. Lo-fi. Let's do lo-fi. And just to keep things simple, we're going to fill up the 8 notes because we already, our green command track here is expecting 8. So let's try that. Now, how would you record a loop? If you've got enough CPU power, you can record it in real time by using a plugin called Meld Production Recorder. M Recorder. All right. So record, play. That's hilarious. So this is our foo wave. Hopefully you can hear this one. Should be able to. That is sheer nonsense. But there you have it. I'll stop talking now. Goodbye.